Yeah. Well, I'll do a video and then I'll introduce the next video that sort of way. I'm just just looking up the first one here.
Let us know when you're ready and we can start recording then.
Okay. Right. Okay. I'll share my screen in a little minute if you want to start recording now. Okay. Just let me know when you're ready.
Yeah. Let's go.
Okay. I don't know who knows me and who doesn't know me. I'm very honored to be on here. I love the enthusiasm. It feeds me, which is very important in these times. We're in a fairly extreme lockdown. Technically, we're not allowed to go more than 5 kilometers from home unless we're medical purposes or you know, you can go to buy food and stuff, but there are roadblocks. They don't really turn people back, but you know, but for good reason. It's very strange times, but I have to say, the Zoom stuff that's come out of this has been brilliant for me living out here. So anyway, we'll see what comes out of this, guys. I'm hopefully this will work. I'm going to try starting this and then press share the screen just to see which works. So now I'll try sharing the screen and we'll see.
At least we can see the reflex in your eyes, your lens.
Well,
great.
I'll this should come up now.
Yeah. You should
put. Can you see that? Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah. Okay. So this is about 8 minutes. I'm just going to let it play through, if you don't mind, and then I have a longer film after this, but I think it should show a progression of some different bits, and then I have 2 or 3 very short films, maybe 2 to 3 minutes, if we have time. So I'll be led by yourself. See how you feel. And Aódan McCardle now. Forbid me, my love.
air is love, 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 love, Forbid me, my love.
Okay, I seem to be on mute.
Wow.
Right. Can you hear me again all right now?
Yeah, absolutely.
That was a performance done at the Triskel Arts in Cork. The brilliant festival used to be on there. Some people know about it, called Sound Eye. And it was on maybe for 15, 16 years, something like that. And while they were doing that festival, which was of the sort of a mixture of poetry, some people on here would have been at it. Chris Cheek was at it. I know that for sure. And I know he joined the group briefly this week, whether he's here tonight or not. I don't know who else, but then they would run a like a cabaret sort of and sort of other performance work. And they have quite a long-standing group or performance venue. They call it Dark Sun. And at the very end, if we have time, I'll play a piece by a guy called Daniel Higgs, who performed there in 2011, though I didn't know anything about that, and performed in that room where I was. And when I did that performance, I got into tattoo, and he was one of my sort of somebody I really looked at his work and the way he behaved and just thought it was amazing. But I didn't know what he did. He disappeared, and I didn't know until later he started a punk band and left tattooing, and he ended up performing in that room, you know, a couple of years before I performed there. So strange circularity. That piece, at around that time, there was a lot of things happening. There was one particular event that happened in America where this young guy, he said something stupid in some rap lyrics, you know. Yeah, they were really stupid stuff, but he got into real trouble because of the stuff he said. And it occurred to me that the stuff he said really only became problematic, other than being thought of as being stupid, whenever people of power decided that what he said meant X, Y, Z. And so I started a good few performances and works which were based on the premise that, you know, power is something that decides what we mean, takes away our language. I did different pieces based on that. You know, what you can write, what you can say, but ultimately, and as we've seen in the last, you know, 4 years, 5 years, power seems to want to dictate to us what we're saying and what we mean, even to ourselves. So that's where that piece came out of. I'm going to put up another piece, which was, I suppose I should introduce a little bit. Martin Gubbins, when he was on a few weeks ago, talked about Writers' Forum. What he didn't talk about was one of the groups that I was involved in with him, which was London Under Construction. Mm-hmm. And it came out of a group of people that sort of did meet around Writers' Forum. It was started by a guy called Piers Hugel. I've been in touch with recently, and I'm hoping to get him to maybe to come on or do something, or just to even say hello to you guys, you know. But what it was a group of poets who did improvised performance work, and it was my real introduction to actually performing in that way. But each performance would have generally a venue, and from the venue or something to do with the venue would come some sort of not quite a theme, but certainly something that had a certain pressure to pay attention to. And we would meet, but never talk about what never rehearsed anything, never really talk around the subject. And there was one guy, Doug Jones, and anytime we'd actually start talking about what we were going to do, he would just start performing something else until we stopped talking about it. And so we would turn up at the event could be anything from about maybe 5 to 7 people. And we would perform and just have some sense of what, you know, what the possibilities were, some ideas about other people had mentioned what they were going to do. But so we would just do a performance then. And out of that came probably most of what I do now, where it's based on various kinds of relationships, collaborative relationships. So even if I'm working on my own, I think of it as a collaboration with either the audience that's watching me, if it's live, which it mostly is, or in order to create a sort of pressure, I think of it being an audience there, even if there isn't an audience there. But that came out of that London Under Construction experience. I think we did about maybe either 14 or 18 performances in about 2 years, which was a lot of work actually. And that was a sort of an offshoot of meeting around Writers' Forum and the sort of attitudes that came out of that from examples of Bob Cobbin and people like that, which was an amazing time to be around there. So then when I came to Ireland, there wasn't really anywhere that I could do that work that would accept it, and except maybe not in the writing world, but in the gallery world. So I had to end up moving sort of more towards gallery spaces. And I did a performance here when I first came over, quite an extensive performance, which ended up going on for about 3 years, because when I did the first performance, I had 2 cameras set up to record it and various types of things, and it all broke down. So the performance itself was lost, except for recordings of it in sound and things like that. And grew from that was this sort of idea of how does a performance exist, and you know, what can you do to archive it, and you know, what sort of lines do you cross when you do that, and what's your expectations. And so about in its 3rd or 4th existence, I think I went to maybe a university in the south of England to do a performance talk about the performance that was lost. And what I'm going to bring up next is that. So if I do that, and in this piece, there's a little bit of me talking about where the work comes from. I did a PhD, which under William Rowe, which was meant to be about Frank O'Hara. But the part it was meant to be about was, if you know Frank O'Hara's work, what it was about was the fact that I wanted to be able to talk about the fact that his walking around and looking and doing before he ever sat down to write was the poem already in action. But in effect, when I went to do that, you know, you know, there's this sort of a pressure. You can't really talk about the poem before it's been written. I totally understand that, but I needed to find a way to do that. So the PhD became about finding a language to talk about that stuff. And that then also became, I suppose, a structure upon which I built my own performance work. Hold on a second. 2013, right? And at any point you can stop me if it goes on too long, or you know, you just want to go home.
Feel free.
Yeah. Is my screen still sharing, or do I need to reshare?
Yes, still sharing.
Oh, cool.
But we are still seeing the still image of the last video.
Yeah, once I go to share again, hopefully that'll come off. Because I think what I have to do is go on and reshare, and it'll allow me to pick a different screen. I think that's what was wrong last week with Sia's pieces. Give me a second here. Everything disappears when you go to. There we go. Okay. Now, has anything changed? Or you're still seeing the same one?
Still the same.
Okay, I've just clicked on Zoom. I'm trying to get back into the control panels on Zoom. It's disappeared on me.
Try double clicking on your own picture, Aidan. It might bring you back then. Oh,
Yeah, okay. No, here I'm back now. I had to close that other one. So I'm going to, okay. Okay. Now, there we go.
Yeah.
Refers to the continuous as opposed to the discrete, the former being the term Elizabeth Cook used to marry Keats's bodily gesture and spiritual attitude. The discrete are particles of agreed value, whether mathematical or logical, syntactic or semantic. Olson's roots this as a response to the thoughts of Herman Melville, especially citing a line from a letter to Hawthorne. By visible truth, we mean the apprehension of the absolute condition of present things. He says, nothing was now inert fact, and continues that man is folded in, a thing among things, which I shall call his physicality. This physicality, I would argue, is a condition of knowing, not the discrete, separate knowledge, but as a condition of duration, continuous. If heart, breath, line is a consideration of the present moment of a poem, or indeed of daily work, then it places the poet as folded in to the poem, and not as outside it, and the breath, the pressure of the breath, as an exchange of force where experience is made not as discrete moments, but as reaction within the duration, which is the condition then of both poem and poet, and by extension, reader. Eric Mottram says, Melville grasped the most relevant single fact of his experience. The inertial structure of the world is a real thing which not only exerts effects upon matter, but in turn suffers such effects. This is in keeping with Lyotard's idea that the obedience revealed for a moment in Tonkunst, the art of sound, not music, means that we, who we, are due to the donation of the event. The donation of the event is the here and now, and we, the who we meet each moment of experience, inexperience, and the poem are due to the here and now. I'm going to talk and present some images relating to the performance Aber, which took place as part of An Gallery's Kiel 2011. The first part of the film here is the score and central focus of the installation that was placed in the gallery, though it has changed slightly, material accretion, in its transition from PowerPoint to film. My performances are improvised and site-specific, but hopefully this talk will narrow the parameters of what that means, at least in my case. In trying to talk about the performance, my performance of In As Aber for Kiel 2011, I come up against the problem noted by Anthony Carroll when he made his metal sculptures, which were so big in his studio that he had to work from within them. He said, you couldn't step back, step away to look at it. I was in the same space as the sculpture. Vanessa Engel suggested by working close up, you suspend taste. Carroll responded, I couldn't really judge. I just had to live with them. That is very much the position within the performance that I pursue and engage. William Carlos Williams said, no ideas but in things. Poetry and performance for me must achieve the status of thing. Robin Blazer says about Jack Spicer, It is part of his notion that poetry is necessary to the composition or knowledge of the real, and this drew him into a combat for the context of poetry, that it was an act or event of the real, rather than a discourse true only of itself. Yes, poetry is an act or event of the real. It is not a writing about, it is not an adjective, it is a doing, it is a being in and of the real. Robert Creeley, in the essay Introduction to New Writing in the USA in 1965, referring to writers such as Allen Ginsberg, William Burroughs, Michael McClure, among others, says, writing distanced from the usual habit of description, by which I mean that practice that wants to accompany the real, but which assumes itself as objectively outside that content in some way. One is either there or not, and being there cannot assume some not being so as to talk about it. Because we speak Okay, I'm going to stop that there. That's the longest piece. I have a few shorter pieces I just want to show you, and then maybe leave the talking to the end, so that, as I say, that was the piece you're seeing there was projected onto a very large wall, and I performed in front of it. There was an installation, but it had to be able to stand on its own because that part of it stayed there for about a month in the gallery. What I'm going to do is find another piece I just want to show you from a little bit later, just to show how my work progressed. Actually, no, just at the very end, I'll let you see what the installation looks like. Yeah, that lets you see a little bit of what it was. As I say, the footage was all lost from the couple of cameras of the actual performance, but there was a lot more went on, because I don't think I know the gallery had never had performance in it before, and I don't think any of the curators had ever had anything to do with performance. So it created all sorts of issues, shall we say. We could talk about that another time, but I learned a lot about what it is to perform to an audience that doesn't know what performance is, to an audience that mostly isn't interested in performance or in art at all. And you know, that a situation that seems quite hostile can be one that you learn a lot about performance and what it means to create work, because I learned in this performance that in the midst of doing the performance, you find the real meaning of what it is you're looking for, not beforehand, and not in some sense that's conceptual, but some sense that you live an experience of it, and that's where you learn something. Sometimes it can be a week or two later before you learn it, but often where things go wrong is where you make some new breakthrough, if only for yourself. So I'm going to try and find another, and these are only going to be short pieces now. Okay, I'm going to share this one. And this was a performance I did in Greece at the start of a performance festival. And I was lucky enough to be invited to do the sort of first performance, and then the space in which I performed a lot of other people performed later, but what I did on the wall stayed there as a sort of a backdrop. This was in about 2016, I think. Athens was in the midst of what Ireland had gone through, which was and was still going through, which was the financial crisis, and so I had to try and find for me a way of performing something that, you know, made sense in the midst of that sort of nonsense, you know. The text was basically written in 3 languages: English, Irish, and Greek. And my Irish is about as good as my Greek, so I could only easily translate those words, which were, you know, the names for things, and maybe their genitive or their nominative or different cases. And they were all parts of the body. I had lists that I'd prepared. I didn't know what I was going to write, but I had lists of parts of the body, and then to do with emotions and to do with thoughts, dreams, those sorts of experiences. And then the piece was written out of those lists. And the premise was my hands are sore. I was working as a gardener at the time here. And I was increasingly finding that the work, I was finding it harder and harder to do. I eventually had to give it up because my own shoulders, hands, and everything were basically seizing up. But it was also about the fact that as an artist or a writer, and certainly the type of work that we do, there's so little chance of ever making a living out of it, that, you know, there's an honesty in that, but there's also a not a hopelessness, but, you know, it is just, you know, and almost the way you know that you're doing it is because it's tiring, and because you get tired, and because it is sore. Then, so I'm just going to quickly move on. I only have a couple more to show you, and they won't take long if I get them set up. So soon after this, I started collaborating with a couple of artists here. I'm hoping that this one's going to come up because I'm going to be having to get this off the internet. Just if you bear with me for a minute. And the group I worked with, we called ourselves Cushly, which is to do with Gaelic, to do with the heart and blood and pulse around that, those sort of ideas. And I'll jump through this one. I'm just about to, hopefully I'll get it on for you here. No. Okay. Here we go. You should be able to see that now, and I'll try and expand it now. We started working together to take the idea of a collaborative performance as a way of negotiating. Our basic theme that we started with and we never got beyond was structure and structures. Those parts of society, of government, of tradition, of whatever, that set up structures that you can never get outside of, or that are used to control how you value or how you think, how you move through ideas. This performance came out of a piece that I had read about road structures in Palestine. They have roads that you're only allowed to move certain speeds on, and other roads that are beside them that you can go faster on, but only some people are allowed to use the fast roads, and only some people are allowed to use the slower roads. Then other aspects that were happening around that time, there was an investigation into this idea of, it was called an invisible red line. And when that line was crossed, you could be killed without having the people killing you having any, without there being any comeback, basically. I wouldn't say that's unusual. I think it's in a lot of zones which are either combat or civil strife, if you like. But the fact that it was sort of more blatantly open that it existed. And we had various things going on in Ireland here at the time, which worked through and came out later in relation to things like gay rights, in relation to abortion rights. And this invisible red line to us seemed to be a structure that was being used by those in power to dictate what was possible and what wasn't. And to me, or to us, the line sort of stopped at the skin, and that, you know, anything that goes beyond that seemed to be an imposition that no one should be making. I'll skip through it a little bit to see, you'll see how it transitions. Again, as in the principle that we had with London Under Construction, one of the main things that, although we all collaborated, one of the main things that I suppose brought to it was the idea that we wouldn't know what we were doing, and that it would be dictated by the materials we were using, by the discussions we had before, and then by the different experiences of the artist.
Aidan, do you have a view from above?
No, it was a part of the structure that we imposed on it was that there was only one camera angle, and we knew while we were doing it that we could have to limit our movement to stay within it, and then that brought us to these pieces of paper, and that also then limited what we could do. So there was different structures there to create limits as to how we could move or what we could do within the performance. So that was part of it, and it created this sense that there was a sort of choreography. People thought we had choreographed it, but it was just because of the limits we created for ourselves. You'll see at the end, I take the camera up the paper so you can see what's on it. Okay. I'm just going to find another one piece from myself, and then I want to play a bit from this other guy, who Dan Higgs. This piece is the latest performance I did, which is with a group of performance. I think you'd be interested in them. One of the groups that took part was called Be Beyond. They perform literally every week. They have group performances. They just have ongoing meetings, nearly always, or always that I know of, in public spaces. They're never curated in the sense that the spaces literally are wherever they decide they're going to perform. Could be in a high street, could be in the middle of a shopping center, it could be out in the middle of a mountain, whatever. Some of them might be invited performances because they are really very well known internationally, but they do them in Northern Ireland here literally every week. They have monthly ongoing performances, and anyone can take part. Anyone can just do whatever they need to do. They're definitely sound based, but it's about bodies and space more than anything else. So they were a major part of it. And then there's a group of performers in Spain, and a friend of mine who was in that performance there, Brendan Hopkins, has taken to creating these linked performances amongst groups. So we did one here during the lockdown. It was meant to be a festival which would bring together performers from Spain, from Britain, and from Ireland to Donegal to perform and to do workshops. But of course, that was all destroyed. So I think 6 of us here performed, and 5 or 6 in Spain around the same time, between one day and another day. And we had Zoom meetings for about 6 months, just talking up to it. And then the performances come out of these meetings and talking around work. So I'm going to find that briefly. I hope. Yeah. Well, I'll find it anyway. That's it. I'll only be 2 seconds. Here we go. Okay, let's see now. So first of all, I'll show you the text, my text that came out of it, just to let you see it. So this is the text that came out of some of the Zoom meetings, you know, while they were happening. And as we moved into the performance, did the performance, and then the text became then edited by my experience in the performance. So you can see that, can you? Yes. And here's the, if I can. Spaces abandoned and in of excluded, how we are directed by Saturday the 22nd, Saturday the 8th, space, time moving backwards in the future, language delayed, owls and links unlinked, break, burr, oak, string attached to other objects, etc., 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 tides, 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 colony and back a link, lifeline, cut the rope, doors, sound in and out, do not, no, no, access denied, green screen, what is not there, the space that is not there, not space, no, not space, not space, the inclusion of not space, and it's a time of the of broken sleep, of sleep effort, stubborn, horizontal struggle to not wake. If it is love you're after, then love is effort, love is determination, love is hackles raised, love is bruising, love is sadness, love is interminable, love is raging, love is despair, love is clenched, love is exhausted, love is one more time, love is bone jarring, love is not a choice, love is a reaction pushed down the throat of those who would not love, those whose actions refuse love, those who would smother love, those who would own it, to rent it out, to sell it, to consume it and regurgitate it and sell it again, those who only want its addictive tendencies, those who want its lazy high, those who want its self-destructive self, those who want it as an infection to infect, those who want only its erosion, love in this no space, in this place of ownedness, of owedness, to owe. This space is bought and paid for, access is imposed, withdrawal is denied, compliance is encoded, to act or not act is charged. Similarly, electronic thinking is an hourly rate. Blow into the bag, your breath is sold at a premium. You pray to breathe in, you pay to breathe in. Payment encoded DNA, you pay to stop breathing.
Great, Aidan.
Okay, that's me. I don't know if people want to talk or want to do whatever. There's one little performance before you go into your nightly performance that I want to show. It's not me. It's I say that Dan Higgs guy. It'll be about 5 minutes long, but I'll promise you it's worth seeing. So thank you very much. I'm sorry that seems very long now.
Don't worry. Thank you very much. Well, we're very happy to have you here. And I had a question about especially the two first videos, because I was very interested in the options of the camera about those performance. I mean, they are not the typical register of a performance when you kind of feel that you were in the same room. In the first one, especially, you didn't see it. It was like in a corner, so you could see only some details and of your hands, or just hear the voice. And in the second one, especially the beginning was very blurred, and I mean, there were not the typical videos of a performance. Some of the last ones, the one, for example, that was a fixed camera showing you three while you were making the performance, it was more easy to configure it. So I wanted to ask you about those options especially in the first ones. In which way do you treat the video as an independent work from the performance, or just a register or something in between?
In those first ones, definitely the camera is just a format. In some ways, it's a format to archive part of a performance, but it also acknowledges that the camera can't you can't watch a video of a performance and get the performance, what it's like to be there. So to some degree, especially probably the first 5-7 years that I was doing those performances, I never let the camera be like an eye in that way, so that there was always a problem there. And partly that came out of in the initial performance that I did here. Well, for instance, the LUC performances that we did, there are odd recordings of them, but they've basically disappeared, those performances. There's some graphic work that came out of them. There's some books that come out of them, and they maybe exist on video, but that's in a sense almost like existing in a language that we can no longer really understand. Like if you did a bit of research into it, you can create it in a modern digital language. But and then when that first performance disappeared, the videos of it, that became part of a thinking of what it means to have done a performance when it's a live and improvised performance, because you can't really remember it yourself. You know, you have a relationship to it and you live through it, but you don't know what it looks like from the outside, and you're pretty confused from the inside sometimes, you know. So so in those, for instance, the second video was what I sort of came to call my performances that were looking for an original performance. And it went through more stages after that built up, so there became more and more layers. And what I did was I took the previous performance, and then it became part of the new performance. And eventually I ended up with videos of previous performances of the performance being projected all into a space, and then me performing through it again. But all of the different sounds were all working at the same time, so it ended up nearly like a white noise. And that final performance was done in a completely dark room, where it was the only light in it was from the projected videos, and those were limited. And the paper, I used the same paper over and over again and added to it. So I had A2 sheets, and I as I did each performance looking for the original, I performed over the top of those. And so eventually, you know, nothing could really be understood. So so certainly for while I was working through those, there was part of it was about the idea that you can't you don't want to create an illusion that you're at a performance.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny because I think it's a way to go against that typical impulse of trying to archive and register everything of the performance. Sometimes you go to a museum and there's like the shoe that the performer used, or the paper in which he or she took an idea, whatever. So I think it made me think a lot about like acknowledging that you are only getting a part of it. So I mean, of course, it might be very different if you already saw the performance and it can remind you of what you saw. But in our case, at least it provokes that, and it's very interesting.
Yeah, but even then, like when you go to a performance, there's so much to pick up, even the other people in the audience, what they're doing, and that can't be picked up by any camera. But also, you're at the performance and then you see a video of the performance. It's not the performance you were at. And if you spend all your time trying to remember the performance you were at, you'll miss the experience of watching the video of the performance. And so it's at the start of that, I put in a bit of a text, and certain principles in the text were, for me, about the idea that, you know, that you're trying to figure out what you're doing as it's happening, and as you're figuring it out, it's disappearing out of your grasp. So there's a certain part where I think of performances as a process of editing your own understanding of the world, so that you're not in control and you find out stuff in the midst of it, you know. So that's also stems from that idea that you can't capture what the performance is, you know.
Yeah, right.
That's great also, Aidan, because I always admire your different objects that you use, the different like support for your poetry, like from your skin, the floor, the body, you know, the community, and the projection. And then how do you feel that change of level when you decide to write into the walls, into the sand, into your body, to your flesh? What is like
it was all very organic, really. The way it happened was in those original performances, like that original one for and gallery. The principle of that was, the call from the gallery was, how does the Gaelta, which is the Irish-speaking areas, how do they exist in the contemporary art world? And so that was the principle of what was being investigated.
Yeah.
And then as I was doing it and writing, I had prepared a whole performance in Gaelic, which as I say, I come from the north of Ireland, and it wasn't that we weren't allowed to speak Gaelic, but the schools that we went to, Gaelic, Irish wasn't part of it, unless you went to certain grammar schools. And so at about the age of 12 or 13, you would start to learn Irish. Other than that, you didn't learn it. So to me, therefore, I had a relationship to it, but I couldn't speak it as a language. But I prepared this whole performance in Gaelic, and at the very end there, I let you hear what the sound of the crowd was like, because this was an opening of a new gallery, a lot of money spent, and a lot of people that turned up were probably never in a gallery before. It was just that, you know, this was their thing. This was their one of their objects of value. So you couldn't hear anything I was saying. So therefore, the whole performance had to be done silently. And when I was supposed to perform, they were meant to introduce the performance, and then I'd perform. There's about 200, 300 people there. But they didn't do that. And so I went out into the middle of this crowd with all this paper, and they just stood there. So the only way I could get them to give me any space, because they couldn't hear me, even standing beside me, was I started putting down the paper, and they just kept stepping away and stepping away. And so then I did this performance with language written down. And then there was a projection on the wall, and I was wearing this white outfit so that when it projected onto me, the words would be there. And so the body became part of the performance, and I just kept going until people got tired, really, you know. And then so I started drawing myself into the performance, because the writing was going to cross me. And so that writing onto the floor and onto myself came out of that individual performance as a way of surviving, because 1 or 2 minutes in, I felt like just, you know, throwing this thing in and giving up on it. But, you know, that was never going to be an answer. That's a thing that I heard people say, that Bob Cobbin said, I didn't hear him say it, that you perform to the room. You know, you have to take in the whole of the space in a way, and that was in my mind in that. But that set off the idea of the writing on surfaces, and then when the performances over a period of 3-4 years just became more and more complex, there was more and more technology. There was more, as I say, the last one, I had so many different projectors and sounds and computers, and then I just had enough, and I reduced it back completely to just the body and whatever surface was there that I could use. So sorry to make that long, but that's how I ended up.
Yeah, I remember when we met in Writers Forum experience, and then you showed me London Under Construction, and we wrote with Piers Argyll that poem with shark in the street. I don't know if you remember.
Yeah.
Stephen was there also, and
That's
then
right.
and then later you came to Paris, and we saw those papers like and words written in the walls. Like still, I have every time that I cross that street, I remember you, and you told me about that kind of just like not first write to the poem into a book, that come later in a way, and your poetry for me brings me that kind of exciting experience. I like to one of the only poets that I want to read what he's writing, because the writing arrives in your experience like at the not at the end, but in the in the present moment. It's not like the meaning experience, your body and your flesh and your soul and your spirit, they are first preparing the spectator, the experience. I don't know if you understand me the question, but it's like but it's more than a question. It's whether I remember of our special moment of ecstasy between like discovering in which part of the different spaces the poetry will be marked or will be trust in a way, and could be in the walls, could be in your skin, could be in the moment, could be in the how do you feel that can you explain me better than that the last night that we stayed at that street in Paris?
That sounded good to me. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, but do you think about the object? Because I when you talk like and about your experience like making poetry, you talk more about the performance, that the moment of the concentration. I don't like much that word performance. I think it's like came from
it's problematic. I'm trying to reclaim it. Most performances here are theater, really. Like the main performance artists here, and it is wonderful stuff. It's very entertaining, and the let's say the finished value of the different films and experiences, yeah, very high end sort of stuff. But I have no I enjoy looking at it, but I don't think of it as performance in the sense I'm thinking of. For me, performance is the act of doing, and in the act of doing, and I'm willing to fight for that one. So that's why I called it performance writing for a good while. I still do, but I know John Hall and a few others that were maybe at the forefront of using those terms. Think of performance writing as maybe slightly different from that, but that's fine as well. I have performed down at I'm trying to remember the name of the university. It's down in southwest England. I can't remember. Falmouth, and it's basically about getting inside the act of doing and figuring out what's going on. And you lose the ability to control and to have power, and you cede that to other things. You bring in your life experiences and whatever you thought was going to go on, and in the midst of this, in front of a live audience, and with whatever materials you have, and with everything that goes wrong, something happens, and you figure out that there's something else there, and that's the point of doing it. Because to me, yeah, it's not that I don't value my own work. That would be egotistical to say that, but I do think that the thing that's worth finding is the thing that you don't know that's going to happen in the middle of it. And yeah, if that's an answer, I don't know.
I remember I think it's Rimbaud's sentence when he said that it's not difficult to make a poem. The problem is to put you in the state of to create poetry in a way, and the object appears in sometimes and somehow. And that kind
or
of
the difficulty, or like the difficulty or the challenge of art is to not just have an experience for yourself as the artist, but create an experience for the other person and who's encountering it. And I think that comes across all your work, and I really enjoyed it. Thanks, Aódan. I have a lot to say, but which I might say, but the thing is, just in terms of the one that was the most textual, where in a sense the human form did not occur, which was the one going from English to Gaelic, and also going in different size registers very nicely. It was almost like a Mandelbrot set of language or of sociality too. In that one, you're translating it for us. I didn't need a translator. I was able, in a sense, to figure out what you were saying, and it really made it very experiential, as did the other ones in different ways.
Yeah, that one was made using, well, I made it using PowerPoint, but everything was done through PowerPoint. The recording was done in PowerPoint, and then what happens is when you add transitions and they have recordings, this weird stuff starts to happen, and it doesn't do what it's meant to do, and it becomes really interesting. And then it starts to record the sound of you pressing your keys to go and so, and it started to build up this rhythm. And so the rhythm of the piece actually came out of inside the machine, if you like. And that was projected, as I say, really, really large on the wall. It was really nice. And then, you know, so the sounds of it, the dynamics of it and how it actually could create itself came out of almost the machine of the making. I wasn't really in control at that stage, you know?
That's really interesting, because just to interrupt you for a sec, at one point it reminded me of this. There's a sort of computer game, but it's also to do with it's not really a game. I think it's called The Life something or other. Came out like 15 or 20 or maybe more years ago, and it's this very simple program. And what they found is the machine visually started creating things they didn't expect. Yeah, okay. It's quite fascinating. It's quite powerful as a kind of just thing that happened, really.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, for you to say that now is a really interesting thing, because I was actually thinking that this thing was almost self-generating.
Yeah. No, I mean, that really is what interests me, is when you're inside a performance and the thing is getting away from you. And it, you know, like I've been performances, and you, as much as I try not to set stuff up, when you go to do it, you really have set a lot up, and you're 2 or 3 minutes in, and, you know, something happens that completely wipes out most of what you brought to it, and you're left kind of bare. And it's then that the thing really becomes interesting. You know, definitely, especially here, because a lot of the performances I do are to people that are, you know, maybe hardly ever been in a gallery. If they have heard poetry, it's a very, you know, it might be Seamus Heaney at its absolute most experimental, you know. So, so then, you know, you really are in a place of doubt, because you think, I don't understand how anyone can get what I'm doing or have any interest in it, or why would they? Because I come from a farming background, in the hills, Sperrin Mountains, and, you know, there was no art, there was no music, there was no poetry, there was nothing like that. But there were people talking. People would call around and just talk. And I found that some of the best responses I've had have been from people that have no relationship to any of this, because they don't have a preconception about it. And that group Be Beyond, we did a performance in sort of a shop in High Street a couple of years ago, and I worked with them and all I was really doing was sitting in the middle of, there was maybe 10, 15 people at different places up and down this kind of like paved road doing different performances, some with particular kinds of costumes that they had kind of cobbled together, some not. And I was kind of just doing a written response to what they were doing. And people could tell I was part of it, but that at the same time, I didn't, you know, they felt they could approach me. So they came over and would sit down and would just talk about what they were seeing. And the responses were brilliant, you know. I'm not sure how I got onto that. Yeah, it's about that not knowing can definitely, even from an audience member, can definitely give you the an insight that you're never going to find yourself, I think.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyone has a question to Aódan to continue the discussion?
I just have a really quick. I didn't saw anything of the videos. I just saw the last ones. But to me, one of the questions is about what's for you the relationship between emission and reception. I mean, it's just about performance where you put out your own writing or ideas and that's it, or it's a collective kind of writing?
Well, you have no control over someone's perception of what you're doing, and I don't pretend to have any control over that. Lee Harwood, who's a poet who I admired massively, he described the poetry as a box, and you take it and you craft it or make it, and you put it down in a room and you walk out, and somebody else comes in and it's something else to them altogether. And that aspect of it, I definitely believe in. I don't know what it means to other people, but I also have learned not to pretend that I know, because, as I say, some of the best receptions I've had have been from, you know, I could do a performance in a place full of arty people, and the best perception of it that I get is the barman or the bar person, and you know, they'll come up and say something, and it's way better than anything that the people that are supposedly into this stuff or into whatever know. So I definitely don't have any ideas about what it's going to mean, but I do try as much as possible to collaborate with other people. And by say collaborate, I mean the point where you're not sure at the end of a performance which part was yours and which part was someone else's, and that I find interesting. It's also quite difficult because you like it or not, you make value judgments about parts that are good, especially if you're creating them and they're visual and you're putting them down, and then somebody comes along and absolutely obliterates them. And being able to take that, I think it's difficult, but I think it's important. So in that sense, you get some sense of what other people are thinking or doing with what you're doing, because they react to it and do something with it, even though it changes it. So I am interested in that, even though I don't know what's happening when it happens. Sorry if that's not an answer.
You are like
But do you open space for people to interact with your performance?
I don't do it on purpose, but it just happens. Because if you're working with, if you go into a certain kind of space, people, they're very quiet and they don't take part. But if you're in spaces, in public spaces, or spaces where there was a thing last week, I think it was last week, yeah, where Sia's one of the performances where the people started laughing. The first sound poetry I did here was at a cabaret, and the people started laughing almost immediately. There was like a nervous kind of laughter, and I kept going for 10 minutes, and by the end of it, the whole crowd were just laughing laugh and laugh. They never stopped, and I just kept going and going.
The problem of connection, Aiden.
In fact, yeah, but it was that laughter thing that came up last week. I thought, no, I mean, that's something that that happens. You've no control over it, but I don't pretend to judge it either. Yeah.
Was it the nervous laughter of recognition, do you think, or?
No, it was a nervous laughter of nervousness. You know, they weren't sure what was going on. I think the best thing that can happen in performance is if people are a little bit unnerved, without it being purposely trying to be unnerving. It's like you know, stand-up comedians do their best to get an audience to laugh. I'm not trying to make them laugh at all, and it's very easy. So yeah.
And then in that sense, it's like an kind of anti-theater, you know. It's not a representation; it's a presentation. It's just like in act. It's like you have not to prepare something to be happen. You are in the mood. It's like an antenna. It synchronizes the wave, and the waves start to happen. What is your degree of perception of the public around you when you are performing?
I think that you need that, or you know, it really helps to have that kind of live audience, and that especially if it's an audience that you feel unsure of, because I think it definitely changes you inside yourself, and that's a more interesting place to be. Yeah. I think Piers Hugel actually called LUC an anti-performance collective. Yeah.
You have to recover Pierce to our group in a way. No, where is him?
Yeah, no, I'll try and get him to come along some evening. You know?
Because I remember that word that we create together at that time, where Martin Gavins, also you, William Rowe, Sean Bonney, all the group, and we are like spontaneously creating things in the walls, and I don't know if we were said that night we will want to visiting the grave of William Blake, in the cemetery of London, and the police arrived.
I don't think I ever read it.
and in a moment we start to read all the monuments around the cemetery, and the cops around say, yeah, no, just you wait, you cannot take under arrest. We have to finish to read the poem with a real. And that kind of that connection between Writers Forum, London and the contraction, and all the group that you participate. How you feel that movement between that group of poetry, you know, like not only the poet who makes things, you know, the collective work of poetry. How do you feel today?
I think that it's just there's always something going on. It's not the thing that you thought it was, and you can't stop to try, and you can't hold on to it, you know. So I'm just always looking for the next. I say the two artists, Alvy Hines and Bernadette Hopkins, that I worked with here for about 3 years. So we did some really, really interesting and quite uncomfortable performances. And you can't set out to do that. You just kind of start playing, and if it happens, it happens. I think like Writers Forum, nobody gave any criticism. You knew if you did something well because there was a kind of an atmosphere. But when you went along there, I mean, I remember going along, and you would have something. I'm going to read this today, and quite often you would end up switching to something that you hadn't quite finished or hadn't quite done, or because you needed to really do something different. It had to really step up, because as each person performed, and you were going, and you basically when somebody would finish, you would go, okay, I'll go. You know, nobody asked you to go. If you didn't go, they weren't going to say do something. You had to step into and do it. And when you had people like Mike Weller there, you know, some of the stuff that he was doing, just really made you want to,
Great.
yeah, you really knew that you could do anything. And it was only when you were really doing something at the edge of what you understood or you were comfortable with, you knew that that would get the response.
Yeah.
You know, so
That for me was fantastic, because in that moment I came from Chile, and all the little group of poets who make poetry, they really like criticize to each other. Felipe, remember that time of like the Fundación Pablo Neruda in Santiago, and all the poets were there, and they really criticize to themselves, and they destroy their semantic poetry in a moment. And I just decided to go to the workshop. I just go after to the extended cachondeo, how say Eduardo, after the show, and to meet the poet after they like models of things. And that in Writer Forum, that for me was the first moment that I feel in a group of poets. They were not criticized. They're just like a kind of egregore of like a kind of atmosphere that put yourself to give the best of you, and all the people were receiving in that kind of I don't know, welcoming creation. That's fantastic. I don't know what do you think? Maybe
I would say, Martin.
I would like to add. Oh, sorry. I just wanted to add that at least in the Chilean version of Writers Forum, the Foro de Escritores, at least half of the people were not like professional poets. There were musicians, artists, performers, people from very different ages. So there was not like a school or a specific movement that has a plan to dominate the world or something like that. It was very free. There were a lot of people very relaxed with their work in the good sense. I mean, it was not something to fight. It was just to see what the others were doing. And also some of us who were poets, but also were interested in music, visual arts, performance, etc. So I like that very much, and I totally agree with Martin. In Chile, there's like a huge fight, competence around who's the most important poet in the country. There's this idea of the only great poets like Neruda or whatever. So there are a lot of people trying to get to that place, and of course it's very stupid, but well, you know how things work.
no, there's a thing that for me that seems to be the most important thing is that those people that have nothing to get from it, it's not going to get them anywhere. They just keep on doing it. And that to me speaks the most, because I might not even really like that much what someone's doing, but if I see them doing it again and again and again, then that's fine, I'm probably going to learn something there, so that to me is the most important thing, just that enthusiasm. Yeah, definitely.
Eduardo,
sorry, go ahead.
No, Stephen, go on, then Eduardo. Yeah.
Okay. I'm just going to ask you about publishing work like this. How do you think about this as being published? Is it just when it's recorded, it's online, that's it, that's the published version? Is there a paper version?
Well, some parts of it are publishable, I suppose. Of these particular performances, no, I don't think anything is been published. Ghazal, who's there somewhere, Paminar is going to publish some of my work, which is more paper-based.
I'm actually going to share the online one that we did, the one that you recorded, the sound of scribble. I'm going to send it to the chat.
Oh yeah, if you can do, yeah, that'd be good. That was that one that Ghazal's mentioning was an in-between one where it somehow moved off the paper and became a performance as it was being done. And then I sort of took photos and recorded a little bit of the act of making the poem. So somewhere in between.
If I can share the screen, I can share it if you want to see. Yeah. Can I? Okay. Let me share the screen.
But Eduardo want to make say something, and we interrupt him in the meantime for the later. Okay.
Okay. You see it now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is the recording I play right now, and then you can see the poems.
The sense of place that is there and you are here. If you do this on a piece of paper, it's one thing. If you do it on a canvas, it's something else. But why? Yes, the material hierarchies, etc., but why? Why those? The action might be exactly the same or as same as it needs to be the same. Maybe the trick is to try not to be an artist or a writer, but is not being a writer the absence of writing? And how not to be an artist? Arting, after all, is not the definition of an artist, so not arting won't disprove, though proving is more akin to dough, and the mind wants to compare dough to money and money to art, la la la, on and on. But if not arting is not being an artist, then not writing is not being a writer, though all of this is close to...
Oops.
It's about speed and time as much as space. It's sort of nonsense, only maybe it's not. Didn't there used to be something like that? 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 Didn't there used to be something? Didn't there used to be something like that? It's a quote from a book. Not a poetry book, but I'm pretending it's poetry, or I'm making it into poetry, or I'm intending it as poetry, but it's a quote. So is it copying, using, stealing? Other big words. But it's the energy, the twists and turns, and explaining is almost its opposite, almost. So different from always, and what this says is not so important as what it does, not that I know what it does, but if I have a sense of something that it does when I read it or think about writing it or having written it while writing it, it's nothing, it's not something, nothing, but about nothing, no other thing, something always, almost always. Being tied to horses is sometimes just energy. There's a lengthy or meandering thought sequence from here that involves cliche about plays on meat and poison that fuses fatalities instead and loops back to energy as creation, and a whole morning goes by and the chainsaw outside still, and there it is again. Brand names and tied to horses and fatality and the difference between IE and Y. Goose. What is the sentence equivalent of a goose? The word equivalent of a goose. Goose. No, an equivalent would be a word that is awkward and can chase a fox from the garden and waken everyone up and scare some like a swan can. And the radio has just mentioned seals and penguins and the route to the Pacific. Historical in Africa, a point on the compass, and I think, what is the sentence equivalent, the word equivalent of a trip to, from Africa, and how drowned would that word have to be? And I think, can I think that? And I think, no, it's can I say that? And I think, no, it's how can I say that? Because there has to be a way of saying things without living off them, without sucking the energy from them, without taking them away from others, without owning them or anything, because owning them or anything, because owning is the heart of it. Owning. That's a drowned word.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Fantastic.
Yes,
Did-
that is
did
sort
you-
of a piece of writing that became a performance, a sort of almost a notation of trying to be performing as you're writing, if you know what I mean. Thanks, Gazelle. Yeah.
Yeah, regarding to what you are saying now about performance or writing, I just have a silly question, but did you write in terms of performance? I mean, did you understand writing as a performance? Because it remembers me a lot like a Beckett kind of writing, you know, this idea of absurd writing, which is not nonsense. just about repetition, just about killing the meaning in a way that it's not getting out of hermeneutics in some way. It's about killing hermeneutics because there is nothing to understand, because it's a performatic act of writing. So when you write, you go in the same space as you go when you perform, or it's in your mind different things?
No, I think definitely a part of the two has to be there. Otherwise, it's it's that thing I was saying, or in the sort of like at the start of that second film, you can't be outside of it to judge it. You can't be outside of it to decide that it's good what you're doing or not. You have a sense of it, but there's parts of most poems that I'm doing that I sort of think, oh no, I don't like that bit, but I don't take it out. I leave it in. Sometimes if somebody else wants to take it out, I go, okay, that's fine with me. Then it becomes something else, but I don't take it out. So they're both coming from the same sort of situation, but obviously there are different atmospheres that have different amounts of power while you're doing them. So that's an answer.
So you think it's trying to kind of connect with a kind of collective writing somehow?
I don't know about the collective writing. I think collective in the sense that you're very aware of other people that you've read, that you've watched, read, that you've listened to. And, those things are kind of hovering. Just like in a performance, there are certain performers that are always there when I'm doing a performance. I mentioned Mike Weller. Bob Cobbin, the last time I saw him perform was at there's one of these sort of museums in London. It's a sort of a crafts and materials. I can't remember the name of it. V&A maybe. And there was a performance there, and he was in a wheelchair, and there were different people performing, and there was also in the corner a sort of a sound system going, and it was so loud that even standing right beside someone, you couldn't hear anything. And so it was quite a salubrious kind of a gig. So there were lots of people there who, had no interest in what the poets were. Maggie Sullivan was performing as well. But Bob Cobbin, I remember about half an hour after, he was wheeled on and off and did his bit, I saw him behind a pillar, and he had a little triangle, and he's still knocking away at this triangle. You couldn't hear anything. And he was still performing about half an hour later. So things like that, or Uli Freer, before every performance that I've seen him do, he does something. It changes every time. And after the first couple of times that I saw him do it, I was ready for it. He's going to do something. And yet every time he would catch you out, so that when he started actually speaking, you suddenly realized that, you had come to the thing with a perception. And that he managed to break that perception before you got any words. So as a collective, those things are with you, I think, in that sense, a collective, but I have no sense of understanding the collective in the way of knowing it, of knowing anything. I really don't believe in knowing that much. So no, not that collective,
No, and when I speak about collecting, I'm speaking more about erasing your own self, more than a collective in terms of speaking for everyone. It's more about writing in a way that the language itself, it works by itself. It's not working through you or through a kind of idea of, I'm saying that. No, it's like language, it's speaking by itself. So that's a kind of mirror of a.
I would agree with that, at least in the sense that I would say if I set out to say I'm going to raise me in this performance, that would be too much for me. That would be sort of egotistical. In fact, that would be almost taking control. But certainly I would see performance, and the reason that improvised collaborative performance particularly works for me is because of all the outside influences and pressures that take over that you don't have control of, and that as you're doing the thing you're thinking about doing, other influences take you away to something else. And in that sense, you're erased. Your intentions or your ego is erased, at least in the sense that what you come out with is not what you went in looking for. Yeah, I would agree with that.
That's actually really interesting, because another way maybe of thinking of this thing of collective is dominances. And,
Yeah.
you know, you said at the beginning about language and the way it comes to dominate and do some horrible things to us. And in a sense, this tussling with language and dealing with demeaning and, you know, dealing with re-meaning, and even having to do some destruction of language yourself against what it does to us. And you know, the thing I wanted to really ask you about was the whole thing with language in the body. In the thing on the walls, and it wasn't the only case where you were doing this kind of thing, of you have this body which in a sense becomes inviolable. It has a sort of protection against all this fucking language that's just coming at it. On the other hand, it's very close to it though. It's right at its skin. And you know, in the tattoo thing, it was right at your skin. And you mentioned skin earlier, and I just kind of wouldn't mind even you riffing or thinking more or telling us more how that relation is occurring with you, and what you're trying to do actually. Because
yeah, I haven't got a clue. You know, I spent a good part of my PhD exploring those aspects of what other people were talking about, embodied language and all. I couldn't figure out what they were talking about, but those aspects of where someone performs a work and you realize that you're using other aspects other than the semantics to understand it. And one of the people would be Maggie O'Sullivan. And in many ways, what she does isn't necessarily too radical. But at the same time, I realized as I was trying to write about her work that if I was really going to say the meaning of it, the meaning of, like, say, one aspect of it seemed to me to be that you start to reciprocate the sounding that she makes, so that you're almost you start to think about what it means to make a sound inside your own body. And I realized that the meaning of the poem was as much to do with that as it was to do with any meanings the words had. And in that respect, I think it's not so much that I know that I'm heading for something, but like that I want to value the functional aspects of make you make your body dance, or make your body some of the writing, for instance, in different scales and on different surfaces, you end up drawing more than writing, and writing you end up more than, and performing the pieces you end up singing more than saying. But these are states that you wander into without you can intend them, but you can't make them happen. If that's so the use of the body and the body tracing, as I say, it just came out of making the work and what was left and what was important. And you know, when I look back on it afterwards, at one performance, it kind of pushes an emphasis as to what might work in the next one, what you could aim for, but you don't know how to get there, and you don't know. So I don't have a really good answer for you.
Well, can I just maybe tease you along here? What I was really getting to was that what you just said was interesting, and I get that, but the social aspect of the body. You're in a gallery, you're drawing yourself, there's people walking around, you're on the beach, there's another body there behind you walking by. There's the Palestinian thing, which was so powerful, and the shape of the body on the ground, and then two bodies almost bleeding into each other as they're compressed by walls. These are social bodies, right? And so you're doing something here which is beyond yourself.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. That's an intention, but I don't really know what I'm doing. It's just that it feels right to do it. Do you understand? In that first performance where I laid down the paper to push the people back, eventually they just started to encroach. And so I started to draw around their feet, and it was like putting a hot pan on someone's feet. They literally jumped to get out of the way, and it didn't have to touch them at all. And I realized the power of that. And in one of the last performances I did, the one that I was telling you about in the black sort of almost cave, there was an audience member that came in, and I just happened to be drawing, and I drew automatically around the feet and kept going. And she was there an hour later. She just felt she couldn't move out of that space, and she told me this afterwards. And you don't know what you're doing or why you're doing it or how the effect is going to have. But also in some of the performances, I don't really have footage of it, where I get people to write on me and I write on them, just with markers and things like that. And I think it's a strange thing, you know, because you're not asking them to write anything in particular. So it just creates it's weird intimacies that, I suppose, really. I think anything, if you're doing something in a social space and there isn't an intimacy involved, then you've lost something. But it's not that you know what the intimacy will be.
Yeah. I think that is a wonderful advantage that the poet have in a way, because you touch magic movement, sexual moments, philosophical stuff, and with not knowing in a way, with all that's kind of power control that have the knowledge in a way. And when you are making poetry and that kind of writing between boredoms of expectation and action, you are discovering and open and touching things like that kind of magic way, you know, that I imagine that girl could say, like, I cannot move from here because you make like some magical shapes that the people are inside, you know, that the Chinese Taoists they say that if you drew a halo of the moon, of the full moon, and you let a little part of the halo open, you will see all around you how a little part of the vision will open to another dimension in a way. And then when you're making things in that connection without control, we are like making like open the boredom between magic and you know, and existence in a way. And I feel you're really hard, really strong in your poetic démarche, on dit en français. And it's told me a little bit about that concept of Derrida, the deconstruction, tu vois, deconstruction. It's not construction. Like in a moment you take things opens and you will make a poem, but the poem is around you, and at the same time when you make the edition of the videos, the last one that you were like painting around your shape of your body, and then you're making a wonderful poem with hands. And how do you feel that connection with magic and with, I don't know, like different dimension of perception in your work?
I think I don't think of it in I think of it in the terms you're thinking of, but not using the words, because I think words can get in the way. So if you, I totally get that it's transformative, and that that you can get to a place that you can't get to any other way. And so I think it would be a case of as soon as you use a word like magic, you have to try and figure out what that means. Yeah, and
No,
you know,
that is-
yes, it
yeah.
means different things to different people, but in the sense that something transforms and it becomes something else. Yeah, definitely.
Transmutation, or that kind of like creating the atmosphere in order to things new happens. That
Yeah.
moment, you know, more than magic, that kind of position of the magician who like had all the material around him and put the things in order that waves continue to do it, you know, and that I felt when we work in front of that wall in after our performance. Stephen was there with William Rowe, the performance in Festina Lente like many years ago, and we go outside and then you tell me, yeah, that is the point of the night, you know, you read in the wall the poem who has presented pulsed in a way for our all the 2 hours that we created before. That is in the way that I use the word magic, or you know, magic.
Yeah.
You know, like that.
Yeah. It can allow you to see what's there
Mm.
in a way that you can't see otherwise. Yeah, definitely.
Or improvisation.
Yeah, well, improvisation to me is key. Even if I'm writing a poem, and maybe this answers one of the earlier questions. Even if I'm writing a poem, I think of it as being an improvisation. You know, where everything can collapse at any point. You know, and you have to be at the point where it can collapse. You know, so yeah. I think it might be a good time for me to play this final little piece and allow people to I have it here somewhere. So if I find it.
But just before, Eduard, maybe you want to say something in a moment, and I.
Sorry. Yes. Of
Your voice. I present you, Eduard and Aidan. You have to meet in real time in a moment. Because they're lovely in a way.
Say something, anything. Please.
I'm looking for a lighter right now. Okay.
You were talking about extended cachondeo, Eduard. I don't know. You used like in a moment. But talk about it.
No, at some point you were talking about Writers Forum, and I think if you see, if you look at the sound poetry, poésie sonore, text sound scene, Filkingen, Writers Forum, I mean, from the 60s, there has been like some kind of networks of poets, non-competitive, but kind of mafia, family, friends, whatever, everything at the same time. But I think it's very interesting, this idea of non-competitive and the idea of network. Somehow we are a little bit alone in our cities, but we know that we are connected and we can share things, ideas, whatever, and there's no rush, or there's no I mean, there's nothing to win, there's nothing to lose, there's only a nice network. And I think it's maybe something new from the 60s, I don't know, but Writers Forum, of course, is kind of perfect example of it.
I remember when Eduard, he organized the Proposta Festival some poets in Barcelona in the beginning of the 2000s, and one of the first to like pay correctly to the poets, like a real yeah, for make a performance. And at the same time we
Good
talk a
sound
lot.
system, I think so.
and
Felipe Casten was there.
yeah, Felipe
Exactly.
Casten. And thanks to Felipe Casten who introduced me to Eduard. And
Exactly.
and after
Soy la
that,
Celestina.
yeah, and we always all my life thank you about that. And with Eduardo, a lot of time we talk about, yes, we are like making the festival, the performance, the action, it could be really good, but it's like a kind of, in Spanish we call it extended cachondeo. Cachondeo is like I don't know how can you translate cachondeo in English, Eduardo and Gerard, but it's like
In between a mess and a happy party.
yeah, you know.
Yeah.
And that the thing that happening between the action, you know, and that spirit that we met in Writers Forum when we met together, and we try to feel in this group also, you know, that kind of connection of also the friends and they're so beautiful, so happy to meet us in a moment and to respect us, you know, not to, yeah, you're not, I am the best writer, you are the worst writer, you know, that kind of stupid thing of some poets.
And actually what we are doing right now, I mean, just sharing things. Every week someone is showing his work.
The sharing things and the kind of possibility to be in like a kind of community in a way that we are not like, we cannot travel really long with our own wings. You know, we need to exchange our wings and make things happen together in different space times. And I love the Aódan in your work that kind of when you pass from your skin for your hair, you didn't show your work with your stones. Sometimes I saw that really wonderful work that you've made with stones some many years ago. You also make like some. I saw some puppets that you have like they're like how do you name that in anthroposophic puppets? No. You know, like those leaders that are under you, not under, but just behind you. You have some little figure.
No, yeah, no, I'm trying to think. The stone, the only thing I did, what I called gaze poems and stone poems, but they were about finding in the dynamics of objects, the dynamics of a poem. You know, so that when you are there in front of them, they speak more about their dynamics than their object status. So in the same way that words create experiences or actions in you, which are which means a step away from just meaning. So I have those gaze poems, stone poems, that sort of a thing. And I've had arguments with people because there's no words in them, and they're desperate to say they're not poems. I don't really care. So yeah. Yeah, that's the only ones I can think of, Martin. I'm not sure which ones you're talking about. To be honest, I do stuff and forget I've done it.
No, maybe let's continue to forget the words and the concepts, and just like introduce us to how to perform now, how to start to play together now.
I want to just show you this little piece then, because this I'm going to share this, and here we go. This will only be a couple of minutes, and this is this guy Dan Higgs, and
yeah, we know.
Yeah, so laughter is a central part of this, and as an action, I think it's just an incredible thing. So.
I died on this very spot before. I was laughing, laughing and spinning. laughing and spinning around. I was laughing. Laughing and spinning. Laughing and spinning I was laughing. Laughing and singing.
Okay. Thank you very much, guys. I really appreciate your attention.
That was great.
Thank you, Aidan.
Get him to the clinker.
Oh, the clinker! Wow, that still
Yeah.
exists, that place.
Yeah, occasionally, but it always moves places and whatever. But you still see, you know, like Phil Minton or someone there, one of these fucking amazing people, and you,
Hugh
and yeah, and yeah, that's another legendary thing. I just wanted to ask for a second, that offshoot of the Writers Forum, I didn't know about, and I bet I was, you know, here where I am in London then. When was that?
It was about 2004, 2005. We did a whole evening at the Clinker, actually, in Dalston. Yeah, that was a really, really good evening, because it started off with the sort of free jazz stuff. And I wrote a piece about, I think about Martin Gubbin's work, where when you're experiencing this kind of sort of like extreme end of the free jazz, where it takes you a while to grow, to find and orient yourself, and you stop listening with the way you normally listen, and you stop, you know, all of that. You have to stop all that, and then it starts to happen. And then when you do this poetry afterwards, you're already hearing so much more, because you're not looking for what you're expecting. And it's the most vital thing to do. Yeah. So which is what Uli Freer does when he does these little things. He breaks the space that you're going to be in when you start to hear him read, and it's a remarkable thing. Which to go back to Martin's thing, that's magic. Yeah, I agree.
Luna and Aidan said that it was in 2003. Luna, what do you say?
Yeah.
2004, 2005, I think.
The
2003.
clinker still exists. I went to one 5 years ago. It had a long hiatus, but it still exists. But whether I haven't been to one for about 2 or 3 years, so someone else might know more what's happened to it.
Eduardo Escofet, que invite Bob Covin and Hugh Metcalf to Paris, but finally only arrived Hugh Metcalf. How was that history, Eduardo? Because the people like really like Bob Covin was created kind of egregore in that was the only one in that time, because he was really friend of Henri Chopin in France, but Henri Chopin didn't create a group in a way. I don't know, Joaquin, what you think, but that kind of possibility to create a space to the others, that everyone becomes like the things go beyond your own, like I'm just the writer, I'm just the poet, we create things for the others. And that I think is really important part of the poet's work in a way.
I almost feel we should have a secondary group that gets very virus-like, and it's not necessarily a discussion group, but it's people like you guys performing, and it's invited to the world to listen, because that's what's needed too. We're in a bubble here.
Yeah.
A beautiful bubble, maybe.
Luna Adrian, where are you? Miss you guys, girls. Because I remember, thanks to Adrian and Luna, I discovered with Martin Gavin and Andres Ambanter, the Writers Forum was really, really important for us. And I don't know. Hey, Adrian. Yes.
Hola, we're here.
You're always like catch it, and that is so sad in this moment of pandemic state. We need your.
I know we're hidden. But it's better because if we turn it on, then we can't see and we can't hear. But now we can hear everything, so it's great. We're like a secret peeping.
Yeah, but it's great for you, but for us, we miss you.
Oh, we miss you too.
Yeah.
I was actually just looking when it was the clinker, but I can't find it. I think you're right. You're right, Aiden. It was actually on the 1st of April, 2005.
Yeah, it's absolutely great.
That sounds right. That sounds right. Yeah.
We perform God is Dog.
Yeah, God is Dog. That was good.
Look at what Aiden's doing.
Yeah, self-portrait.
He's drawing.
Maybe we can make all of us a self-portrait like that and start to sound, no? Felipe?
Excellent, Aiden.
Time to start performing.
Yeah. We start the collective cachondeo.
That's
Amazing painting.